pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comment. I do not believe we had anyone sign up. Correct? All right. Number 4. I'm going to say this really slow, Lance. Approval of the April 6, 2022 Public Safety Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Ask to approve.
Supervisor Wilhelm, and second by Mask. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. 5, policy issues, discussion and potential committee determination. We have none. 6, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. We have none. 7, if it's okay with the board, I'd like to skip ahead to 8C. The district attorney has a case that she has to go to, so could we, if it's okay for the body? All right, then we will bring up 8C, 1, updates from the district attorney's office. Thanks, Teresa. Oh, yeah, that you can present.
Is it, oh, now it's working. There we go. Hello, my name is Teresa Whetstone. I'm the district attorney for Marathon County. I have been with the district attorney's office since 2002, and I was elected to district attorney in 2016. I understand this to be a sort of a overview of the district attorney's office and the current state of the district attorney's office, but if you have any questions, please feel free to ask those. In your packet is a layout of the district attorney's staff, and our office is responsible for the prosecution of crime in Marathon County. So law enforcement agencies throughout the county, as you know, this is a very large county, landmass-wise. So all of the law enforcement agencies in the county refer to the DA's office. They send all of their reports to the district attorney's office. And our 13 prosecutors, I'm one of the 13, and I have a deputy and 11 assistant district attorneys. They review those police reports and determine whether or not charges are appropriate. And so that encompasses, I believe there's 16 law enforcement agencies, if you count the DNR and the Division of Criminal Investigation, that refer into our office all the way out to Colby Abbey, Stratford, Edgar, Spencer for crimes. So law enforcement makes a determination of what charges will be referred or what charges to arrest on, but ultimately it is our assistant district attorneys who determine what charges will go forth to the court. And then we take the case all the way through prosecution. If there's a conviction and there is an issue raised post-conviction, our prosecutors also deal with the post-conviction motions, any adjustments to sentencing, pardon requests. If there is, separate from post-conviction, there can be appeals. Those are done through the Department of Justice in Madison through the Assistant Attorney Generals. We have a very robust diversion program. I'm happy to talk at length with any of you if you'd like to meet with me to learn more about that. Our diversion program is for low-level first-time offenders in an attempt to have an intervention with that individual and have a response that is dependent upon the individual, those circumstances, and the crime that they're referred for to have the most positive outcome as far as reducing recidivism and for any victims that may be involved. We're able to collect restitution through that. We're able to provide services and by way of treatment and counseling, whether it be mental health or AODA services. Sometimes the individual, it's a very young individual, they had a bad judgment, and they may only be in the program for 6 months and determine that this was just a blip on the screen and it doesn't need to be a conviction on their record. If we're able to do pretrial diversion, it would be without an entry into public records that would, so any kind of employer or anything like that wouldn't be able to access that information. So it's really dependent on the offender in the pretrial diversion to determine whether they're going to have an entry in the public record or a crime charge, because if they're successful, that doesn't occur. We also have post-charge diversion for maybe a little bit higher level offender who is facing a felony. They've never had a felony before. We give an opportunity with supervision to complete supervision and maybe have some misdemeanor convictions, but not necessarily the felony, which can have some serious consequences for them later on. So our diversion program has been running, I should have got my number, but I think it's around 2006, 2007. We do have hundreds of individuals in that program. It also helps the criminal justice system because they are supervised without the intervention of the court if they are pretrial. So we're pulling all those cases out of the criminal justice system, which is a tremendous help. We had a lot of advancements in the office in the last couple of years, which have helped with efficiency as well as cost, as you can see from the packet. Prior to having a preliminary hearing testifier, all persons charged with a felony are entitled to a preliminary hearing to make the state show that we have probable cause to go forward with the case. It used to be that we would bring in the officer to testify at that preliminary hearing. Well, we don't have to bring in the officer, so we have now a designated retired law enforcement officer and another law enforcement officer who's not retired but is younger, and they provide testimony at those preliminary hearings rather than calling the individual officer off the street where they might be subject to overtime. It really inconveniences them for childcare and family and other off-time obligations. So we have had great success with those testifiers. They have been accepted by the court. And as you can see, by having a hourly wage for the designated preliminary hearing testifiers and not having to deal with all the overtime and those, and not to mention the inconvenience for the officers who sacrifice enough on their daily jobs, it has saved a tremendous amount of money for the municipalities, including the sheriff's office. And then we've tried to keep up to date with electronic data. As you can see, if you caught it in the packet, our office's process is approximately 15,000 digital media files each month. It is overwhelming to think about the volume of digital media by way of body cam recordings, surveillance videos, forensic interviews at the Child Advocacy Center. There's just a plethora, I mean, cell phone downloads. If you can imagine if you have a teenager and the cell phone use that they have, and now that teenager is involved in some kind of an investigation and you have a cell phone dump of that data, that item of evidence alone, the volume is just overwhelming. Our prosecutors range, depending on what kind of a caseload they have, anywhere between 200 to 400 open cases at any given time. The issue in our office is not so much the number of cases coming into our office, but the fact that the cases are not resolving and getting through the system at the same rate that they're coming in. So the cases are building and building and building. So the pending caseload for our prosecutors is representative of the fact that the cases are not moving through. And as it's stated at the end of our packet information, the pandemic did not help that. We are trying to process cases now through trial that have been waiting. It is a tremendous strain on our victim witness staff cases are stacked on top of each other, and we're trying to notify, these are citizens and victims and witnesses, and trying to notify them and say, hey, you know, your case may go, it may not go. Okay, take off of work, but you might not have to take off of work. It might go, it might not go. It's a very situational as far as the volume, but it continues, and it will continue after the backlog, because I think that's going to have a repercussion for years to come. So that is that's a lot of words, and I'm not sure what else you want me to cover, Lance, but we're...
Yeah, so thank you, Teresa. We're just kind of looking at a general overview at this point, just so that the new members, we're trying to bring the new members up to speed
Okay.
of what the oversight is for this committee. So yeah, that's just a general overview, I guess, for the new members or actually the continuing members. Is there any questions for Teresa? All right, thank you.
I really appreciate you being willing to take me first, and that was very helpful. So thank you. It was nice to meet all of you, and good luck with your term. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, I will turn it over to Chief Deputy Billub in Sheriff's Department. Okay, thanks. That'd be great. Do your spiel.
Before we get to the sheriff's office update, I'd like to invite Mr. Dave Torko up here in order to give a brief presentation about LEAP and all that they've done for law enforcement here in Marathon County.
It's tough to follow the sheriff, but not quite so tough to follow the chief deputy.
Thank you.
I'm Dave Torko, and I'm a member of the board of directors of the Law Enforcement Appreciation Project. This project began about 2.5 years ago with a group of people visiting in a kitchen about the opportunity we felt was necessary to give some positive reinforcement to law enforcement in Marathon County. 13 agencies, 230 patrol officers. What we've done is we've given the citizens and businesses in Marathon County an opportunity to donate money, and then we in turn buy gift cards so that those patrol officers can buy coffee or soda when they're on duty. So that's the gist of what we do. Board members, Darcy Westcott, Dick Rayborn, raise your hand. Dick Barrett, Gary Mason, Jan Kocha, Andy Anderson. Unable to be here today, Dan Kirchma, Brenda Walters, and Kara Weiland, and Roger Grebe. This is our fourth presentation of gift cards to the departments for the patrol officers, and I think the donations have ranged from $10 to $5,000, and we've been in existence, like I said, for 2.5 years. So at this point, Chad, I think you can help distribute the gift card baskets to the chiefs that are here. And then the Marathon County Sheriff's Department is very helpful and supportive, and they distribute these gift cards to each department in the county.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you to all the members of the board who are here today in order to show their support. With us today is Chief Tim Miller of the Stratford Police Department, Chief Terry McHugh from the Cronin-Water Police Department, Captain Melinda Pauls from the Wausau Police Department. Those are the ones that were able to make it. I know there were a couple other chiefs that were hoping to get here today, but on behalf of all of Marathon County law enforcement, I want to thank you, Dave, and your entire group for all that you've done for us and the recognition and the joy that you bring to many of our officers every time that you guys stop by and visit with us. So thank you very much.
Forgot one quick thing. We have many supporters, but Craig Studeman from Abbey Bank is here representing one of our major supporters. Craig?
Captain Milhausen, would you mind helping grab some of those agencies that are here?
I'm not sure
And
how
I'll-
many you want to distribute because there's really just kind of like this is draft for, I don't know if there's anyone, there's a list of the county mayors here, the Marathon County Sheriffs. Okay. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. And this one's Marathon County Sheriffs.
How much delivery do you want to make? We'll load you up and pack you out.
This is the sheriff's. You got the biggest bunch in there.
Uh-oh. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Sure.
All right, and I will continue with our presentation here real quick on behalf of the Sheriff's Office so that the committee can continue with their business. So the Sheriff's Office is made up of 5 divisions. We have the Administrative Division, the Communications Division, the Corrections Division, the Investigative Division, and the Patrol Division. And each one of them have a different mission, but they all work together in order to fulfill the Sheriff's Office-wide mission of ensuring that we have a safe and secure community where people can go about their daily lives and not be worried about crime and the impacts of crime here in Marathon County. The Administrative Division largely is responsible for just what it refers to, the administrative work that we do, policies, procedures, budget, all of our computer support, vehicle maintenance, courthouse security are all housed under that division. That division is made up of about 20 to 25 people who do that work. The Communications Division is a group of about 35 to 38. Right now, we're very short in that division because of the staffing challenges and the hiring challenges we have for 911 dispatchers. The role of communications is really to field all of the 911 non-emergency, emergency calls that come into our office. The Communications Center is the only public safety answering point in Marathon County. You recall, not too long ago, there was another dispatch center here, and that was the State Patrols, but that has since left. So the only dispatch center here is the Marathon County Sheriff's Office Dispatch Center. We are currently down in that division 9 staff right now, and we're working to fill those positions as fast as we can. We've worked with county administration and employee resources on different opportunities in order to build on that recruitment, and right now it's going pretty well. The Corrections Division is our largest division in the Sheriff's Office, and that is the jail. And we're pretty unique here in Marathon County in that we're not just a jail as you would envision, the brick and mortar, the cells, and corrections officers overseeing inmates. We also run a great deal of programming out of our jail. We have a welding program where we have inmates who have the ability through North Central Technical College to get a welding certificate. We do HSED, GED education within our jail. We do counseling, a program called Dad's Coaching, where we work with men that are incarcerated in order to get them on the right track as they're getting ready to leave our facility. We have religious services that take place here once a week. Sometimes we'll have volunteers that will come in and do religious services more than that, where they might have a men's devotional or a women's devotional, depending upon the group. We have a social worker assigned to the jail and a forensic mental health therapist who is stationed here but is an employee of North Central Healthcare. On top of that, we have contracts for all of our food service, for all of our inmate medical care, and in essence, that facility runs like a small city, and it's pretty self-sufficient up there. Trying to think what else I could tell you about the jail. That is our biggest operation. That is our biggest liability. If you hear about the sheriff's office getting sued, quite frankly, it's not just our office, that's every sheriff's office. You have to be on your toes, your policies have to be up to par, and we are within that division. The Investigations Division is really unique in that it's spread out and does a number of different things. It does the investigating of crime, but it also houses our prisoner transport team, which we call Warrant and ID, our civil process unit, which delivers all of the papers to people in the community who need those papers served for some sort of a legal purpose. There is a forensic computer lab. We are a regional forensic computer lab, so we partner not only with in-county agencies, but also surrounding counties that come to us, and we're currently working on agreements, potentially with the Green Bay Police Department and the Appleton Police Department, to expand our reach and the technology that we have, because that technology is very, very costly. One piece of software that we use, we're getting ready for renewal, and their prices have gone through the roof. It's now $85,000 a year for a subscription to one tool. So we use our partnerships in order to leverage that so that we can make our dollar go further. In addition, we have a FBI narcotics task force that's housed out of the sheriff's office. That is a multi-jurisdictional task force with the FBI, the Wisconsin Division of Criminal Investigations, the Marathon County Sheriff's Office, Wausau Police Department, Everest Metro Police Department, Wisconsin State Patrol, and the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. All work out of that unit and do criminal narcotics investigations here in Marathon County. And those are the higher level, large cases is what they primarily focus on. We also have an evidence lab and an evidence technician that handles all of that type of, every piece of evidence that comes in through any of our teams will flow through our evidence technician. And then the last division is our patrol division. They are the most visible unit that we have, and they're the ones that Mr. Torkel was here speaking about today, the people that you see in our uniforms. They patrol Marathon County highways, and one thing that I think will surprise some people is just how few of us there are. For Marathon County, there are only 36 road deputies authorized. So depending upon the day, training, whatever, we may only have 5 deputies working all of Marathon County. Geographically, as you already likely know, we are the largest county in the state. We have hundreds and hundreds of lane miles of road that we cover. And there are times when your West End road deputy will cover everything from Edgar to Abbotsford, from Dorchester to Marshfield. That's your assigned area for the day. So they do a very good job with what they have, and they do their best to get to calls as quickly as they can when they're needed. We have a fleet that serves the patrol division. Actually, our entire office fleet runs about 100 vehicles, but that includes all of the special teams that we have. We have teams that are SWAT, bomb, dive, crisis negotiators, a drone team that will go out. We just had a missing person that we did a press release on yesterday. That drone team was out with our FLIR drone looking for the missing person earlier this week. We have size, weight, load enforcement deputies who are trained in motor carrier enforcement, canine deputies. I know I'm missing some. We have a lot of specialized teams that work primarily out of that patrol division, but we will use folks from other divisions to augment that just because we can't deplete our patrol staffing. We currently have one contracted deputy that serves the town of Rib Mountain. I almost slipped up and called it the village of Rib Mountain because they are working on becoming a village or a city. Depending upon the route that they go, they will be required to have law enforcement services by statute. Right now, they're not required to have those services, but they have wanted enhanced services, so they pay the sheriff's office a contracted rate for that deputy. Regardless of how quickly they can get to their village status, they have already told us that they want to contract another deputy come January 1. So we are already in the process of preparing for what that's going to be when we add that extra contracted deputy to the town of Rib Mountain, January of 2023. So I know I threw just a ton of information at you. We are the largest county department as far as staffing goes. We have over 200 employees at the sheriff's office, and there's a lot of different things we do. The one thing that I would recommend is that at some point in time, we get you a tour. I think to get you in to see the 911 center, to see the jail, to get you out to where we keep all of our special response vehicles, to see our administrative offices, and then to spend some time with a patrol deputy would be beneficial in helping you better understand the work that we do at the sheriff's office. Any questions?
Supervisor Mask?
Go ahead.
Chad, am I correct that Rib Mountain pays for the equipment and the vehicle for the deputy and the future deputy?
Yes, they cover 100% of all costs associated with having a deputy there. The only costs that we have said that we want to retain are things that we want to keep in the event we ever sever that relationship. We have computers that are protected through what's called CJIS requirements, so we just can't give back that computer. We need to take that back, so we retain that. Weapons, we wanted to retain, So those weapons would come back. So we actually will put up the cost of those things, but the costs are very small in comparison to what they are putting forward. Things like the vehicle, the vast majority of the equipment in the vehicle is all funded by the town of Rib Mountain.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions for Chief Deputy Billum? If not, thank you, and thank you to LEAP. I guess we will. There's no objection. I think I'm just going to keep going down on the list instead of jumping back up to the strategic plan. So we've already done 2. Any objection to that? Okay. We will go to BC3, updates from the Clerk of Courts, Kelly Schremp.
Good afternoon. I'm Kelly Schrapp.
Kelly, you want to just come up here?
So we'll try this again. I'm Kelly Schrapp, and I'm currently the acting clerk of court for Marathon County. I've been acting clerk of court since the beginning of December of 2021 after the retirement of Shirley Lang, who was actually clerk of courts for 7 years before that. I've been employed by Marathon County and the clerk of court's office for just about 12 years now. I think most people have heard of the clerk of court's office, but probably don't really have much of an idea of what we do, so I'll give you an idea of that. So in Marathon County, we have 6 judges. We have 1 family court commissioner and then 1 staff attorney. We have a register and probate and 31 support staff. We currently have 6 branches of court, and then we have 6 courtrooms and 2 hearing rooms that we call courtrooms A and B. Courtrooms A and B are used by the court commissioners. Each branch in court consists of a judge, a court reporter, a court clerk, and a judicial assistant. So we're responsible for record-keeping functions in the court system. So we create and maintain court records, we record liens and judgments, and we provide access to court records. Back in 2017, we started with collections with the Department of Revenue, so all of our unpaid fines and forfeitures get sent to the Department of Revenue for collections. We've collected well over $1 million, $2 million, probably more than that since 2017. Before that, we really didn't have a collection system in process, so a lot of that money sat on the books for a long time. So as a matter of fact, we're collecting now, some things go back to the 1980s, some of the fines that people haven't paid. So it's been very good for us. And we don't have to do anything much. We just send the money, or we send the accounts over there. Department of Revenue takes care of it. They send us a check and we enter the information, and we're able to clear up a lot of old debt that way. Excuse me. So I guess basically at the end of the day, we're here to make sure that our courts run smoothly and efficiently. We deal with a lot of customers every day at our windows, coming to open new cases, pay on their fines, just questions about the court process in general. So we all have to be pretty cross-trained and knowledgeable of what's going on within the courts so that we're able to answer those questions knowledgeably. And like Chad said about, he said about going for a tour of the jail and the sheriff's department, I'd be more than happy to give you a tour of the courtrooms too if you ever want to go on a field trip. Just let me know. I had talked to Lance about that at one point, so we can set something up like that. If you've never been in a courtroom, it's kind of interesting to just see how everything is, and you can go sit up on the bench and use the gavel and pretend you're a judge for a little while. So I guess that's basically all I really have. Does anyone have any questions for me? I feel like I'm really short behind the screen, so you probably can't even see me. Okay.
All right,
That's all
well,
I've
thank
got.
you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to 8C4, updates from Medical Examiner's Office. Jessica.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jessica Blonick. I'm the medical examiner. I've worked for Marathon County in the medical examiner's office for over 11 years now, and 9 years of that as a medical examiner. So the medical examiner's office is in charge of conducting death investigations. So we investigate any death that occurs outside of a healthcare facility if the individual is not enrolled in hospice care. So any type of scene death, typically with law enforcement, and then also any death that involves any sort of injury, trauma, any death that's not natural, so homicides, suicides, accidentals, and then even deaths in healthcare settings if it meets certain criteria, such as if someone has a hip fracture or some sort of injury, our office would have to take jurisdiction and investigate that death, because physicians by state statute cannot sign death certificates if there's any injury associated with that death. So our office is smaller staff size than a lot of the other presentations you've seen today. We have 4 full-time staff members, and fully staffed, we have 6 on-call staff members. Earlier last year, we did a few staffing restructure where we did hire a part-time death investigator / office person. So we decreased some of our on-call staff members, and we're also looking at staffing changes right now as we have a few opening positions that we're recruiting for. Besides doing death investigation, scene response, we also issue cremation authorization and disinterment permits for any time any funeral homes or families need those. We do a lot of public education through two healthcare providers, law enforcement, emergency medical providers, and also the high schools or at-risk behavior. Trying to think if there's anything else major. We're a busy office. Last year, we were involved in over roughly 1,400 deaths. Of those deaths, 600 of those were investigations and 80 autopsies. For autopsies, we have to travel to either Madison or Fond du Lac to get those provided. We currently are looking into developing a local facility here through the Moore Project, which I'm sure a lot of you will hear much more about in the near future. We're involved in a lot of other prevention measures through our death review teams. We have a child death review team and overdose review team. We sit on the Highway Safety Commission, and we're also looking at starting a suicide review team with community partners, and that's about it for an overview. Any questions or anything else?
All right, thank you, Jessica. All right, then we will move on to 8C, 5, updates from the Emergency Management Director.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Philip Rentmeester. I'm the Emergency Management Director, and I've been the director for 7 years. I've been with the county a little over 7 years. As the Emergency Management Director, I typically deal with 5 different mission areas in emergency management, and that's prevention, preparedness, mitigation, response and recovery to natural disasters and man-made disasters. Do that in a few different ways. Do it through exercises, do it through training, through outreaches, through whole community approaches. I talk to different departments, different governments across the county. We have a large amount of municipalities in this county. Talk to a lot of non-governmental organizations, talk to volunteer groups, work with all those folks, not just working with their response, but also with their planning and their emergency operations planning. Oh, there was a fire alarm going off. Someone went out the wrong door. Wrong door. Essentially, that's it. You know, we have a lot of things going on. Preparedness, for example, we monitor the weather. Today, just as a heads up, if you haven't been following it, we're looking at some severe weather potentially coming in between 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock this evening. Possibility of hail and wind, just a heads up out there. So that's about it. That's what we do. If we do have a disaster, if we do have an event that occurs in the county, what I would need from you, the potential exists where we may have to declare a disaster. And I would be coming to the board or coming to the county chair or vice chair to declare an emergency. By doing that, that's going to free up some resources. It's going to free up some opportunities for us to look into some reimbursement funding as well. And that would have to be done relatively shortly after the incident occurs or even during the incident. Now, there's a few ways that we can do that. We can go right to the chair and have a proclamation made. We can go to the board and have a resolution done. All of it has to be in accordance with the county ordinance, and the emergency management ordinance is number 6. Again, if there's any training or any exercises that you'd like to see out there, if you'd like to learn more about emergency management, be happy to come and talk to you some more about it. That's all I have for you, though. Do you have any questions for me? Oh, yes, of course. Thanks, Lance. One of the projects that we were working on and we're looking at completing in the future is that a different delivery system for the emergency medical services across Marathon County, and if there's any feasibility in doing it a different way than what is currently offered and delivered. We're not there yet, but we have explored some options. We've been working with some local leaders to get their thoughts on that and what they would like to see out there. And what we're considering in the future is going for a feasibility study on identifying those alternatives or options that could be out there for us to best serve the residents of Marathon County. That's a project that I'll probably be working on a bit more than what I have been over the summer months and into the fall. And we've also been working with the university CITY students through the UW-Madison last year, and with those students, they were assigned a bunch of different projects from other departments. But through my department, one of the projects that they were working on was emergency medical services in Marathon County. They identified some great things that we're doing. They also identified some shortfalls and some thoughts on how we can improve our programs, our program delivery. So I would say that you could probably see me looking at that and bringing that up to the committee in the future with some ideas. Okay, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, any questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so we'll jump back up to 8A. Before we do that, I guess I'd like to just say to the committee, to the new members, so the one thing that's a little different with this standing committee compared to the other standing committees in my mind is that most of our reporting relationships with the departments are usually elected. So we have the sheriff elected, we have, the judges elected, paid through the state, both of them. We have the clerk of courts elected. So that's a little different. That's a little different than the other committees. Because if the other committees don't want to do something, it just says, no, you're going to do that. They don't answer to the voters. So anyway, that's one thing I just wanted to point out, and I think most of you probably knew that, but I just wanted to point it out. That being said, I'm going to start with 8A, overview of committee responsibilities relative to the 2018 to the 2022 strategic plan. So for the most part, when we are going through the strategic plan, if you scroll down to your section, what page would that be? 6? A few years back, we went through the strategic plan and kind of went through who's going to take care of what. So when you start looking through this, you can see where the committee leads are, but there's also committee support. So we support the healthiest 3-3, ensure that every child makes it to adulthood with health, stability, and growth opportunities. So Health and Human Services is the committee lead. We would be the, public safety would be the committee support. So we support that. So from time to time, you'll see it in the next couple of years, we typically would meet, I don't know, I'm guessing here, do we meet maybe 3 times as a joint committee? What we'll do is if we have something like that we discuss, and it is both the committee lead and the committee support that we feel would be advantageous to have a joint meeting, we will typically get together with Health and Human Services Board is who we would, as far as a standing committee. And like I said, it depends on what it is. When the opioid issue was really, really thick, and we were talking, Vice Chair McEwen and myself went to NACO, and we came back with a whole bunch of information on opioids and some of the things that practices that other communities were doing. We brought that forward, and we brought that forward in the same that I just said with the Health and Human Services and the public safety together, because instead of saying it twice, we could just be there together. So those are some of the things. And I guess with that, I will kind of turn that over to Lance, because he's going to have some words to say about the...
Thank you, Chair Boots. And I'll start with this. If at any point you have any questions, please interrupt me. I much prefer to have a conversation as opposed to lecture, but I think I can handle lecture as well. It's just not as fun for both of us. But when we were putting the agenda together, working with Chair Boots, he asked me to address essentially three pieces as we try to build at the committee level on the orientation you had at the full board level. One was to kind of, again, further lay out the importance of the plans that the county board has approved and how they drive the day-to-day work of staff. Two, provide a brief overview of the departments that you'll be seeing frequently within your committee, including, as Chair Boots referenced, how that relationship is a little bit different with this committee than perhaps some others that you may hear of or you may serve on, including the chart that Chair Boots referenced within your packet on page 6. And then really all those things in service to the third idea that the chair laid out for me, which was lay the groundwork for your discussion of how to structure your work over the next term, which is actually the last item on your agenda for discussion. So I'm going to try to do that going through as laid out on your agenda, starting with, as the chair referenced, a discussion about the strategic plan. But before I even get to the strategic plan, I want to start about what is the foundation for the strategic plan. And you all should have an executive summary of the 2016 comprehensive plan, but I want to talk about that just very briefly as to what the comprehensive plan was and then how that informed the strategic plan. So this is available on your website, on the website, and if you don't have a hard copy of the executive summary, I can get it to you. But here is the actual comprehensive plan. It's 174 pages. It's available on the website. If you need that link, I can share it with you. But in 2016, the county board took a pretty innovative approach. For those of you familiar with comprehensive planning, those are typically very land use driven, and they're required by statute in the state of Wisconsin. Counties have to have a comprehensive plan, but again, they're land use zoning focused. The direction from the board in 2015 and through 2016 in the adoption of this plan was really to expand that to make sure that every county department and every committee could, in the 2016 comprehensive plan, see their role in moving forward the priorities of the county. And in fact, in 2016, what the county brought forward was a plan that had 64 priorities. 64 specific objectives were identified in 2016 by the board through the process that they laid out that the county needed to be focused on for the next 20 years, because that's what the comprehensive plan is. It's this 20-year forward-looking plan. If we want to be the healthiest, safest, and most prosperous, those are the things we need to focus on. So that was the framework that really supported the development of the strategic plan in 2018. Again, this document, you should all have a copy of this. This was handed out in, I believe it was handed out at the orientation, or it was in your mailboxes. But the 2018 to 2022 strategic plan, the board, again, forward thinking, said, you know, one of our primary roles as a board, we are a policy board, we're going to put together policies in the form of a plan. The strategic plan, essentially what the board did was it sought to take those 64 objectives that were, when you look forward 20 years, all the things we think we need to be thinking about, the board said, okay, what's the next 5 years look like? What is 2018 to 2022 during that time period? What should the focus of staff be? And the board took those 64 goals and they identified 12 priorities, and the Chair Boots already hit on a couple of them. What do we need to be focused on over the next 5 years? And I want to just show you in one of the infographics how this was organized. But you'll see here are the 12 objectives. It's on page 11 of 28 of the strategic plan. There were 4 objectives under that overarching goal of healthiest, 3 under safest, and 5 under most prosperous. But as you've gone through this document, I'm sure you have the same observation that I do. There's a lot of overlap. You know, something that is listed in the healthiest area, as Chair Boots referenced, oftentimes there's overlap between health and safety, hence the reason for these joint committee meetings that have occurred in the past, and I'm sure will continue to occur in the future. But I just want to pull up one of the infographics, and we'll just take the first one, Objective 3.3, and I'll show you a little bit of how the strategic plan further builds on the comprehensive plan. So as I indicated, the comprehensive plan identified 64 objectives across those realms of healthiest, safest, and most prosperous. So you'll see the objectives from the strategic plan are drawn word for word, essentially, from that comprehensive plan. So objective 3.3 in the strategic plan is from that comprehensive plan. So the middle line, that objective line, that is from the comprehensive plan. Excuse me. Also from the comprehensive plan are all the strategies. The strategies are listed across the top of this infographic. So you'll see strategies A through E for objective 3.3. Those were identified in the comprehensive plan by the board as ways that that the board believed staff should seek to, or the board should seek to, accomplish objective 3.3. So everything from that green horizontal bar and above, that was all in the comprehensive plan. We did add, the board did add, when appropriate in 2018, strategies, but by and large, a lot of the strategies were identified in that comprehensive plan. What's new is everything below that green line. So just to demonstrate the value in the discussion that took place throughout the development of this strategic plan, ensuring that every child makes it to adulthood with health, stability, and growth opportunities. Very laudable goal, very broad. How would you know you're accomplishing that? To that end, that's what the county board identified through outcome measures 1, 2, and 3. If we were moving the needle, if we were doing a better job of ensuring that every child made it to adulthood with health, stability, and growth, what would we expect to see? So the process of developing this strategic plan, not only was the board involved, the board directed that the community be involved, so there were stakeholders that were convened, and they sought the input from subject matter experts, staff, and ultimately what came out were those 3 outcome measures. So, for example, we would expect to see an increase in graduation rate. That essentially is outcome measure number 1. Outcome measure 2, we would expect to see a reduction in the number of out-of-home care days experienced by children in Marathon County. Again, out-of-home care is something that social services does with a child. They receive a report of a child being victimized through abuse or neglect. On occasion, we have to take that child and put them in foster care or place them with a relative. We would expect, if we're doing a better job of ensuring children make it to adulthood, excuse me, thank you, with health, stability, and growth opportunities, the number of those days would go down. And then lastly, we would expect to see an interruption or a decrease in the number of young people that are making the transition that we frequently see, not only in Marathon County, but across the state and across the country, that transition from young adults in our juvenile system to being young adults in the adult criminal justice system. So those were the new feature, one of the new features of the strategic plan. The last new feature that I'll talk about is this circle on the right. Okay, this has got to be somebody's, we all play a role, but who really is doing a lot of the work that relates to this goal? And you'll see we identified, staff brought forward a list of departments that we thought played a role. The county board considered that and ultimately adopted it. So you'll see that the strategic plan does really build upon the comprehensive plan in terms of the objectives and the strategies. It starts to flesh out what those additional pieces, how are we going to move the needle? As Chair Boots referenced, one other thing I really want to spend just a little bit of time talking about is the chart on page 6 of 16 of your packet. This was, again, that chart that the county board said, hey, we have to identify who's going to be, moving this strategic plan forward. Your rules designate the vice chair of the county board as essentially for lack of a better word, the champion of the strategic plan. However, it can't just be one person's job. what committees do we want to have focusing on which pieces here? And you'll see there's a fair amount of overlap. So objective 3.3, ensuring that every child makes it to adulthood with health, stability, and growth opportunities. Health and Human Services is the lead, but public safety, as Chair Boots referenced, very important supporting role. And, you know, building on what the chair referenced, I do recall one area that when Chair Boots was previously the chair of Health and Human Services, Vice Chair McEwen was the chair of Public Safety, there were significant discussions about ACEs. That was a big topic. Adverse childhood experiences, a big topic with the National Association of Counties. How can we be informed by our work around understanding the impact of adverse childhood experiences on the life outcomes of people? That was a topic that was discussed on a number of occasions in a joint committee meeting. So you'll also see that not only do you support objective 3.3, 3.7, you're the lead with respect to objective 7.1, and I'll get into that in just a minute, but also a support with respect to objective 7.2. So you'll see that fair amount of overlap between each of these objectives. The last column on the right is the department lead. Similarly, the county board identified which departments probably play the preeminent role with respect to each of those objectives, and we captured all that information on this chart in 2018. So if there's any questions about the strategic plan, happy to take them at any point, but the last thing I wanted to talk about relative to the strategic plan is the desire to have an update, periodic updates, to see whether or not the needle was moving. And the way that staff tried to provide information to the board, again, demonstrating how your plans are really important. The comp plan, the strategic plan, those do drive staff work on a daily basis. One of the chief jobs I have as the administrator is to take the work from these plans and develop my annual work plan, which I then take to the board for approval. I develop that work plan based on the directives of the board. Some of those directives are these plans. So in 2020, we did put together and deliver to the board in early 2020 an annual update. So what had we done from the adoption of the strategic plan in early 2018 through about halfway through 2019. It took us a considerable amount of time in 2019 to really capture a lot of that data and try to report it to the board. But we did that through a document that is electronically available on the website. If you go to the top under the Excellence tab and you click on Strategic Plan, you can see this annual update. It's organized in a very similar way to the comprehensive plan and the strategic plan around these areas of health, safety, and prosperity. It's also interactive, so if you want to bounce between one or the other, you can click on Healthiest and it'll take you to the various priorities there. But what we sought to do, and this is only from the staff perspective, it's not a compilation of all of the work that the individual committees or even the board has done. This was what have staff done through their day-to-day work to try to move the needle with respect to the priorities identified by the board. So I've been talking a lot about objective 3.3. I'll carry that through here. We'll just start with objective 3.3. The board identified, again, the overarching objective there, ensure that every child makes it to adulthood with health, stability, and growth opportunities. How did staff try to carry out the will of the board? We listed these are some of the key things. This isn't everything, but some of those key changes we made. Implementing a school-based mental health consortium, and there are hyperlinks within this document. You can click on it to learn more about what we've done, and there's a nice report on the mental health consortium. We expanded secondary traumatic stress training. You had a presentation from the people from LEAP today talking about the difficult jobs that our sheriff's office has, as well as District Attorney Whetstone gave you an overview of some of the challenges within their office. The medical examiner, a lot of the departments, certainly good examples within under the purview of this committee, but they exist elsewhere where our staff are intervening in people's lives at times when there's a response to a traumatic event. If a sheriff's office is dispatched to a report, detectives are investigating a child sexual assault, for example. Social services, social workers are likely involved. The sheriff's office will be involved, the district attorney's office likely involved, corporation counsel's office likely involved, prosecuting a child in need of protection or services action. Our court system, you know, a lot of these we had thought about, but there are a lot of departments we didn't think about. Kelly was here, the clerk of court. We would have court staff perhaps sit through a trial and have to hear. You know, their job is to log evidence that's coming into that court trial. They're hearing about, you know, the investigation. You're hearing about someone being traumatized. That itself is the definition of secondary trauma. We recognize there's a lot of really great data on the impact of that on staff. So one of the things we sought to do was make sure that we offered support to our staff so that they could do their best work intervening in the lives of our residents and guests when they needed our help. So we did a lot of work around secondary traumatic stress, and you'll see that by the end of 2018, we had 250 staff participate in that 3-hour training, which, you know, I was a prosecutor for 8 years. When I left the DA's office, we started talking about these things. The amount of improvement we've done, not only as an organization, but across the state and across the country, in recognizing the importance of this has really grown dramatically. Lena Start, understanding that the first several months of a child's life, birth to 3, critical to brain development. We are one of the first counties in the entire country to implement the Lena Start program that measures and it helps parents improve kind of the serve and return. The idea that even though a child can't talk, a parent talking, pausing and allowing the child to mirror back, whether it's goo goo gaga or whatever, that interactive talk with children, extremely important. Again, one of the first counties in the entire country to move that forward through a partnership with our library. Crisis assessment response team, a great example again of what Chair Boots referenced, this idea of overlap between the various priorities within the strategic plan. A lot of the work of law enforcement is in response to mental health calls. You know, it's not purely behavioral and it's not purely mental health. There's a lot of overlap there. So making sure that we have professionals trained in recognizing when someone is in mental health crisis and when they need a specifically tailored approach, really important. So we expanded a lot of our training. We created the CART team, a partnership with the Sheriff's Office, Wausau PD, and North Central Healthcare. So you'll see, and I know I'm being a bit long-winded here, but there's a lot of these key programs. I encourage you all, please read through it, because you'll see a lot of the work that that staff have done based on the direction from the board. So you'll have a couple of documents that I referenced already, the comprehensive plan, the strategic plan, the annual update. The last document I wanted to reference was actually, portions of it were in your packet today. And that related to the department summaries that I'm showing the district attorney's office department summary on the screen right now. That is an excerpt from the 2022 annual budget. One of the changes I made in the beginning, in my first year as administrator, try to expound upon the descriptions of the individual departments for the county board, because again, the department allocations through the budget is your most important policy document you generate each year. You put our resources, money, and people to the things that are your priorities. You certainly, there are things that the state mandates we do, so there are portions of that budget that are largely set, but the budget is a choice. It's a series of choices. So I included those documents in the those excerpts within the packet. Kim put them in the packet to help you understand some of the general work of those departments. And the last thing I'll talk about is, as Chair Boots referenced, your committee is a bit different. The relationship you have with departments, many of them are elected. And you can see DA, Sheriff, Clerk of Courts. Then you have the flip side, which is Phil Rentmeester, Jess Belanek, those are appointed. So you direct me as the administrator to carry out the will of the board. I can do that very directly with appointed department heads. I work very collaboratively with the elected department heads. You do set their budget. And when I talk about collaboration, I talk frequently about partnerships. Chad gave a couple. The Sheriff's Office partnership with Rib Mountain in terms of delivering a higher level of service that Rib Mountain requested. We partner with other municipalities. The City of Wausau, I know Phil has left, but we signed some very important contracts with the City of Wausau in the last 2 years that I think serve the county well. They were, I was directed by the board to move those forward. One, hazardous materials response. Rather than duplicate efforts, let's contract with other municipalities, whether they're local municipalities, other counties, or the state, where appropriate, to deliver higher quality services at a lower cost to the taxpayer. And then the last one I'll talk about is partnerships within our organization. Teresa brought up the partnership for the testifier position. Great example of, hey, this is a mandated service. We have to deliver this. We have to, as part of our prosecution, have people testify at preliminary hearings. And rather than calling a sheriff's office deputy in on overtime after they worked the night shift the day before, which is a not only inconvenience for that staff person, it's difficult to work with scheduling with the sheriff's office. Let's solve that a different way. Let's have a person who is, their job is to read those police reports, be able to deliver what is needed in terms of evidence and testimony, but in a way that is at a cost savings to all of our municipalities, and it delivers a higher quality of service at a less cost to the taxpayer. So we do a lot of partnerships internally, working with North Central Healthcare, which is, again, really a multi-county department. All those things are carried out through the budget, but those are driven by the priorities identified by the board in the comprehensive plan and your strategic plan. Our partnerships with North Central and with other governments, you'll see within the strategic plan, the last objective is promote cost-effective public services, which again, it also references a specific objective 7.1, which is really do that within the public safety realm. So we really, as staff, are always trying to carry out the will of the body through those as set by the plans that you approve. So I hope that accomplished your three objectives, Chair Boots, but happy to take any questions at any point. I do think certainly we will, in the future, you took a lot in today from all of the departments. We do want to have, we've talked about specific education on one department at a time to get a little bit of a deeper dive, but make sure that the education is tied to a policy decision you're gonna be asked to weigh in on at this committee and take to the board. Phil's example of emergency medical service delivery is a great one because that was a topic of discussion at during the last term of the county board. Is there a way we can do that differently? And we'll do a much deeper dive into the education on what's permitted by statute and what's not. Because as I frequently say, I'm a bit of a broken record here, we are creatures of state government. We have things we have to do, and we have things that the state will allow us to do, and we have a whole host of things that they won't. So we'll do that in the future, and certainly by statute, one of the things that the county board is required to do is take an annual tour of the jail, and we'll make sure that this committee is able to do that.
All right, I'd like to add a little bit to what Mr. Leonard said. He always does a good job of kind of wrapping up what we do, but I guess to simplify just a touch, so we got the comp plan, which is a 20-year plan. I just got on the board, I think it was 2 years in when we finished the comp plan. And the comp plan is kind of a general overview of what this county's goals are. Like he said, there's 64 objectives in there. It has other things in there. Then what happened is we developed the comp plan. The comp plan is a 5-year plan. The 5-year plan is administered and kind of, I guess, keeps tabs on it by the vice chair. So the vice chair will come around probably every 6th meeting. He'll sit down with us in our meetings, sometimes more depending on what's going on, and he'll ask where we're at. What have we been doing to follow the strat plan? When we went through the strat plan, what happened there and how we came up with the 12 goals is what happened was staff, and Lance, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is 4 years ago. What happened was we went out to stakeholders in the community, and we said, here's our comp plan. If you were to take 12 out of here, what would be the 12 that you would want to see us work on first? Those are then brought into the full county board. We had an actual workshop where it was, I don't know, Lance, 3-4 hours, somewhere in there. We sat down, and then we were divided up in groups, and we talked about everything that had been brought up. We talked about safest. If you see the 3 that are highlighted there, if you want to pull that up, Lance. So the 3 that are highlighted, the healthiest, safest, and most prosperous. And we said, well, why don't we pick out 4 or 5 of what you think are the best ones to pull forward from the county board? This is what the community said. This was their top 12. Now, what do we as the representatives of the community think of those? And then we took our 12, what we thought were our 12, and then we worked this all out, and that's how we came up with our 12. And then I guess the last thing is, so you got the comp plan, the strat plan, but then there's also the work plan. And I feel that's, I guess, how I would, in my world, it'd be like a building, when I do a building audit, I'll say, this is your 20-year plan, here's your 5-year plan, and here's your 1-year plan of how you need to do. There's something real close, like, okay, this year you need to do this. In the next 5 years, you better do this. And then at 20 years, you should have most of this done, and you kind of move that. The comp plan, in my mind, is more of a guide than the strat plan. The strat plan is what we're working on in the 5 years, like I said, and the work plan's like, we need to get this done. That work plan is brought forward every year to the executive committee through Lance, going through what the committees do every year, and he says, here's what I feel is what my work plan should be according to what your strat plan is. And then Lance will go through that, and then the executive committee will be like, yeah, or nope, I think you should add this, take this off, and that's kind of what we do at the executive committee. We bring that forward to the full board, then they vote on that. So that's yearly. So just so everyone's aware, that's how that all runs through there. Go ahead.
Was that the one that was the yellow? Was that the yellow, green, and red plan you had?
Yes. So that's the strat plan, and that's the one we're currently working on. Oh, the work plan. Yeah, the work plan was the one that Lance brought forward, and then was what? How many were on that this year? 28. I'm just guessing without my.
There were,
It was
yeah,
like
I don't know
the
the exact
20s.
number. There were, with the subsections, and to your point, Supervisor Marash had, one of the things the executive committee asked for was a delineation within that draft work plan of what items could be stopped, because I think there was a recognition that the annual work plan has far more things on it than those things that can be accomplished in a year. So which things could be stopped, which things from an operational perspective really could not be. And there's a legend that helps you try to identify those. But that's, your statement is correct.
And alluding to what he just said, the reality is we have not had an assistant administrator for, you tell me, we had one for 2 months and 6 months, and then we lost our assistant administrator, so we have not had the backing, because what would happen in that scenario is typically they would divide them in half. So when Lance was the assistant administrator, Brad Carger would take half, and Lance would basically take the other half, and they would divide that up. That's been getting done by one person at this point. We're looking at another person currently, but that's kind of where it goes. And as he alluded to, what he said was how our plan, it's impossible for him to get the 28. We knew that going into there. We're like, okay, you can't get this all done. But if you can get to something, what's the priority if you can get to it? The ones we know you have to are these. Here's what we'd like you to get to if there's time. So that's kind of the way that went. And so off of that then, so what I'd like to do for the next meeting for sure is, and I'm going to put that out to you, Lance, is I'd like to have, remember when we did the last 2 years we went through and did what we worked on? I'd like to have that highlighted sheet that you had me do. I'll bring up a highlighted sheet, and what we do is when we have discussions, when we have any type of presentations, it typically is, we're doing this presentation because of one of these objectives. So we'll say, okay, we're bringing in ACEs, like he said. We brought in ACEs, and it was with the Health and Human Services Board and the Public Safety. We went through the ACEs, went through that. And the reason we did ACEs was the training was to look at 3.3. Like, okay, this is how we, pretty much everything we do on this county board is by the comp, strat, or work goals. And that's kind of how we do it. Now, 20 years, so we're looking at 2022, we're probably going to be going back through the strat plan 2023, and I don't know how that's all going to be done, if we're doing it the same way we did it last time. Obviously, those can be tweaked from every 5-year period, but we will be doing that again, and you'll bring up another 5-year plan off of the comp plan, or things we could add to the comp plan too. You can always add anything to these documents if the board so chooses. I just wanted to say a little bit more about the way we respond to things. So I guess what I was, so I would say, when was it? And alluding to what Lance had said about mental, so if we don't number, I'll just leave it at this way. So a project that we worked on that was a big deal, and this was probably, I don't know how many years ago it was, but as Lance said, what typically used to happen in Marathon County is an officer would arrest somebody, they bring them to the jail. There wasn't really a vetting process to say this person's either on drugs, mentally unstable, or both. So you're bringing a person into the jail that at sometimes isn't even, we don't have the right personnel to deal with that type of situation. So one of the big things we did with Public Safety and Health and Human Services is develop that relationship between the sheriff's office and the North Central Healthcare to have somebody along. And that was something we also dealt with in NACO. And what you end up doing is you almost make like a database. Because something I learned through the process is, for the most part, you have the same people do this over and over and over again. So it got to the point where some of these people, they come in, they know right away, okay, he's off his meds, he's this or he's that. So that was one of the things that was a big gap in, I would say, in the entire U.S. that is being adjusted now by counties. Like, we're now getting to the point where, another thing was what, Lance? The medications. So it used to be, how did that, you can fill them in on the, I would like to tell them about how the medication scenario worked back in the day.
So I think, again, a good example of how board policy and direction cause staff to investigate what are best practices and how can we work to implement them with both those last issues, making sure that our jail is housing the individuals that it needs to house to maximize public safety, and ensuring that we're doing a better job dealing with individuals that have persistent substance abuse needs. One of the groups that we started, and actually it began with our evidence-based decision-making group, looking at, again, best practice. So evidence-based decision-making, the idea being at every stage of the criminal justice system, and there are a lot of important stages, we want to make the best decision possible. So how would you do that? If the decision is being made on the street by a law enforcement officer and whether or not to arrest someone, we want to make sure that the law enforcement officer is properly trained in identifying what Chair Boots referenced. Is this a mental health issue, a criminal behavior issue, and making sure that that individual officer is exercising their discretion in the most informed way possible. Similarly, when we get into the court process, judges, and this is the most important decision in the judicial system, is that initial decision of bond. The idea that I've been arrested, I've been housed in the jail, the idea, do I stay in jail pending the outcome of my case, or am I released in the community with certain conditions to ensure that the community is protected? Widely regarded as the most important decision, one of the most important decisions in the justice system, because it has so many impacts on so many other things. You can imagine if you're an individual housed in the jail and you don't have the prospect of getting out while your case is pending, you might respond to an offer from the district attorney to resolve your case short of trial differently than if you're out on the street. your life is impacted. You're unable to work, unable to see if you have children or family. So it's a really important decision. So we want to make sure that the individual making that ultimate determination of bond, which is the judge, has information available to them that helps them make that decision in the best way possible. Evidence-based decision-making, that's the overall piece there. So the county started that in I believe it was 2013, 2014, prior to my time in administration, bringing those parties together, like I talked about before, about partnerships within our organization and outside. So we have the judges, district attorney's office, social services, North Central Healthcare, county administration, corporation counsel's office, law enforcement from both the sheriff's office as well as other municipalities. So a very multidisciplinary group. And we broke down and identified what are the things we could do differently. So a lot of the things that Chair Boots is referencing, tools to help law enforcement make the best decision they can on the street, tools that help the judges make the best decision when they're in the courtroom. All those things were kind of outgrowths of that evidence-based decision-making group, including that CART team that I talked about, Crisis Assessment Response Team. One of the things that was identified through evidence-based decision-making is, geez, there's this overlap between our mental health system and our criminal justice system, and it's really important to make sure we have people, when they need to be in the criminal justice system, they are, and when it's a mental health issue, as quickly as possible, we identify that it's a mental health issue, and we make sure we treat that as well. And there are times when they're in both. As Chad referenced, Chief Deputy Bill referenced, making sure that individuals in our jail have the best access to substance abuse and mental health treatment is really important. Still have a lot of opportunities, but as Chair Boots referenced, a lot of that, there are times when it comes back to the committee, but it's really the work of the committee is identify through these plans and through continued oversight, what does the committee want to see in terms of outcomes? Staff then go back and figure out how to do it. We do come back and tell you how much it's going to cost and ask for you to allocate the funds. But we're the how people, you guys are the, hey, why? Why do you want something done? What programs or services do you want to offer? We then try to make it happen.
Thank you. I was alluding to the drug aspect, but that's fine. No, I
Is
could
that the medical?
Yeah, when we got through NACO, we actually got it so that when they go to jail, obviously they can continue their meds, and there's not a disruption in meds where they used to be.
Sure, and I think, that again is a how piece. And building on that, it's, there are times when it's not only continuing their medication, it's a lot of the individuals we deal with have substance abuse issues that sometimes require treatment with various drugs and treatments that otherwise wouldn't be available in the jail. So that was one of the things that Health and Human Services and Public Safety referenced that, again, came through evidence-based decision-making, this idea of medically monitored treatment and the expansion of opioid intervention medication.
Yep. And then I guess the last thing I'd like to touch on real quick is our reporting relationships with the departments. So like we mentioned several times, let's just start with the sheriff's department. So the sheriff is elected. He's a county employee. We pay him direct, but he is elected, and we give support staff to that. Now, because he's elected, he's in charge of his own budget. He asks us what he would like to get, but please, what I tell people is please understand we still have the purse strings. We are the one that will take that money and put it in our budget. Same thing with the DA's office. If you move to the DA's office, the DA is a state position. But we provide all of the support staff except for the assistant DAs. So anything for their secretaries, legal assistants, that's paid by the county. I could read state statute. I won't bore you with it, but it'll tell you what we have to provide for them to their DAs. There is some discretion in there, so we do have some say in what goes on in the DA's office. Clerk of Courts, same way, that is paid by Marathon County, elected position, basically the same. Judges, so we have 6 judges now. We got our 6th branch The judges are a state employee. We provide all of the support staff for the judges. Again, that's a statute of what we have to provide for them. We have to provide a chambers, we have to provide certain things per state statute. There's that. Then you have Jessica and Phil. Those are just direct employees, report directly to Lance. So that's the only difference, but do understand there is some, as much as they say they're elected officials, we do have a lot of say what goes on. And we have always, in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I know Craig always had a great relationship with our department heads, whether they were elected or not elected. They seem to, we always have some struggles, but nothing that I would consider over the top, or no, I'm not going to do that. So at this point, I know, I guess I'd like to know from the new members, would you like to we're gonna do the tour, obviously, with the full board for the jail. Is there any other of the departments that we report to that you'd like to see set up? Would you like to set up as a group? You just wanna do it by yourself? You're not interested? I guess I'd like to hear your thoughts, other things you'd like to have. We're gonna keep going on this, like, we'll probably do an education, like Lance said, next time, but we'll also have actionable items with the informational stuff, so we can get rolling on it. And in the meantime, you can always call me or Lance with questions. Gene Mask has been on this board. Gene, how many years have you been on public safety?
I don't remember. It's been
So
a long
like
time.
So she's the
And I
vice chair.
was on and off, so.
Okay, so she's the vice chair. She's always available too if you have questions. It is a lot. It's a lot to take in. I can tell you that go back in your minute. You can go back to the minutes of any meeting. You can look through what we've discussed in the past. Anything on the forefront that we have coming up is one of them is the EMS. I'd have to look on the work plan, but I mean, there's we'll basically go through the strat plan is all we're gonna do. We're gonna go, okay, well, and for the most part, I'd say 90% of the things we put on our agenda is either staff looking at a strat plan and saying, oh, I really think we need to look at this, and they'll bring it forward to Lance, and they'll ask me, can I put it on there? And members, go ahead.
When it comes to financing, like, for example, Sheriff's Department, is it based on what we bring in for revenue as a county for a year? Or how do we actually, from year to year, because you're gonna have different dollar valuations, or we borrow the money to offset losses in revenue, or?
Sure, great question, and I think I listed a number of documents that I think, if I were in your shoes, would be very helpful. The annual budget is a great place to start. Most of the departments within under the purview of the Public Safety Committee, are largely tax levy funded. To your point, there's not a whole lot of revenue coming in. The DA's office generates a very small amount of revenue for collecting discovery and disseminating that discovery, like Teresa talked about, those electronic files. But the vast majority of the money that goes into the criminal justice system is tax levy. So the budget gives you the breakdown of what that has been over the last 5 years. If you flip to the end of the budget, I think it's the third to last page, is the 5-year running. Probably starts on about the 8th to last page, but it gives you the 5-year increases or decreases in terms of the look back on each individual department budget. Now, some of that isn't overly helpful because you'll have changes. For example, we moved emergency management, had a significant expense within its budget that got moved to the sheriff's office, or it gets moved out of the sheriff's office. But you'll see that those budgets are largely driven by the divisions that Chad spoke about. Our spending relative to corrections, that's a pretty stable piece of the budget. You'll learn a lot more when you read through that annual budget of where those dollars are going. We intend to continue to try to get more data to you to know where the dollars are going. But those department 5-year look back, 5-year budgets would probably be helpful to understand your question. Our tax levy amount, and you'll see this also through the county budget, is pretty consistent. That is, it's driven by the tax levy limits in the state of Wisconsin, and I won't get into overly detailed here, but our annual growth for tax levy is limited by those tax levy limits. to what is our net new construction value, which generally is about $1 million of new tax levy we take in about 55 million, just for easy numbers, 55 million of tax levy. So it'll go up by about $1 million, a little less than $1 million a year. But our cost to continue, as you might imagine, on a $200 million budget, we all know about inflation now more than probably we knew before, but the cost to continue every year exceeds that amount. So those partnerships that Chair Boots was talking about and that I referenced are really important, because we're always challenging ourselves to do the same we did last year or more with essentially a structural deficit, less money. But the annual budget document is probably the best place for you to start for a lot of that understanding.
So I guess just a quick thing that I guess I could just throw out there for just the last things we started looking at when we went to the last NACO meeting, which would have been in January. Some of the things we looked at were, so fentanyl it used to be, opioids were the big buzzword. Now it's fentanyl in opioids or in marijuana or in all kinds of things at this point, people passing away from that. Workforce development was a huge one. Alluding to what Lance just was talking about, so we have a budget that is 200 million, and we have inflation that's high, and we have a workforce that we're really have big gaps. I mean, our criminal justice system has big gaps. We can't find people to work in the jail. And then, if you are going to find them, you have to entice them to come here and work, which means more money, and with a lowering budget. So there's going to be some things with that that's really going to affect the criminal justice system as far as getting help right now. So that ties into all this. Court backup, because of COVID, courts are crazy backed up. I mean, I sat down with Teresa, and Brent Jacobson used to be the last vice chair. We talked for hours. And it's bad. I mean, they're backed up. They're really backed up. We have another judge, which is good, but you still got to, and we got, Teresa got another DA. So it helps. They're working on things like video-based initial hearings, things like that to try to speed things up. But there's a lot of things we're overcoming that we're seeing the effect, especially in the criminal justice from COVID, just the way things played out. So I just wanted to point that. Those are some of the things we're going to be tasked with, trying to speed things up. And yeah, go ahead.
Two other things that I can tell you that you will hear more about, that are policy decisions that are ultimately going to have to come through this committee to the full board. Phil referenced the one, which is, do we want to deliver our emergency medical services in a different way? Right now, the involvement of the county is really on the dispatch end. We dispatch for all the public safety entities in the county. As Chad referenced, we have a lot of different law enforcement, but think of all the fire and EMS services we have. So do we want to have a county-wide system? I don't know what that would look like, because saying something's county-wide, there's still different ways to deliver it. Doesn't mean it needs to be a county department. We could perhaps contract in different ways. But EMS delivery is one. And then the second one, and Jess, medical examiner Bolanek, brought this up. The Regional Forensic Science Center has been a conversation for a great many years. And to your point, Supervisor Wilhelm, as I referenced before, there's a lot of stuff in Marathon County in the justice system. They're not revenue generators. We're not going to make a lot of money delivering these services. At best, sometimes we break even. This is one of those times when, you know, the question for the county board is this a service? Again, you guys set the why through your vision, your mission, your goals, and you determine what programs and services we offer through the allocation of funds. This is a what. Do you want to directly provide regional forensic science center services, or are you more comfortable with our current delivery system, which Jess referenced, where we take individuals for autopsies down to Fond du Lac, Madison, Milwaukee? That's a big discussion that needs to happen, and we'll probably have a full meeting on education on that, because there's about a 60-page business plan that we developed, and we can provide you information that says these are the two paths we could go down. But
like when they were looking at that, was that something that would shorten the duration of a case maybe if you're with the examination? Because you're sending it to Madison where it would be locally instead of,
It wouldn't really help the justice system in terms of the speed with which cases get resolved. It would certainly help the medical examiner's office to not have the difficulties of scheduling. It would also help law enforcement that, if you think about the Wausau Police Department, for example, if there's a suspicious death or a death that requires autopsy, they may have to have an officer work on overtime to send a detective down to Madison, so you're driving there and back. If that individual was able to stay locally, you perhaps would have benefit in terms of staffing costs. But that'll all be within that document, and we can make sure that we get you that well in advance of the meeting because it is a 60-page business plan.
And just to tail off of that, so with that, we'll have a full, like you said, a full discussion on that. But much like the therapy pool, which nobody was really involved with here, so besides the two original supervisors on the committee, but what happened there was we didn't have the money in our budget to do a pool. So we're like, tell you what, you guys come up with half community partnerships, right? If you guys come up with half, we could probably foot the other half if you can come up with. Honestly, they did a phenomenal job. They came up with it. So that's kind of the direction we're doing with the morgue. You know, if the community wants a morgue, we're like, listen, we're strapped. You know, things are tough on our budget right now. If you really want a morgue, we'd like to see it come up with that. And that'll all be spelled out when we have that, so everyone knows where we're at with that. With community partnerships, when we don't have the money to budget for it. And then as far as that EMS goes, it's funny you brought that up because I actually was at a county board or town board meeting last night. And the reason this was brought forward was some of our fire departments in the municipalities have a fantastic one. One of them that I can think of, he's back there, Maine has a fantastic EMS system. Now I went to town of Texas yesterday. These are smaller departments, Hewitt, things like that. He told me they have 3 EMS and they work full time. So we have plenty. It seems like we don't have an issue with firefighting in Marathon County. In my mind, the rural communities have issues with EMS as far as the first responders, the EMTs. It's a hard thing to get people to, because 2/3 of your calls, I think that was the number they gave me, 2/3 of the calls are usually EMS. And majority of the people that are on the fire department aren't EMS, they're just firefighters. So that's one of the things, and this was actually brought forward from Keith Langenhahn. If nobody knows who that is, Keith Langenhahn was the chair of this board for, I want to say 10 years, maybe even longer. He might have been longer. But anyway, he brought this forward because he saw a gap. You know, you have the 10 minutes and then you have the golden hour. If you don't get a person to the critically injured person to the hospital and within an hour, their chance of survival goes way down, like exponentially. And I can tell you right now, just in the town of Texas, if we don't have an EMS person there that gets there, the Wausau is like minimum 15 minutes away. So it's tough. You know, we have to find the right, and this is one thing they're trying to do, like and we're doing a feasibility study just to see what that is. And again, that's another one of the 28 work plan that was kind of, if we can get to it, because that's how much we have on our plate. But it is something that we thought was important last time around at this committee. So with that, does anyone have any questions for now? If not, like I said, we'll all be available. And if you want to see something for either Lance or I to put on the agenda, feel free to let us know. If you want more education on anything, you want to go on a tour, I'm sure we can line those up for you if you want to go on tours. The jail one I would just wait on because I think they're going to do them. They're going to do those. But if somebody wants to go on the court, see the courts, and I think
We can.
Chair Boots?
Go ahead, Gene.
In reference to the jail tour, I've got the Wisconsin Department of Corrections annual jail inspection in front of me from 2021. And it's got a lot of really important and interesting points on it and explains a few things that are taking place in the jail. And possibly a copy of this could be provided to the new members. I think we all received it on county board in January, because this letter is dated to Scott Parks January 31st, so we probably got it in February. But the new members aren't privy to this, and it's got a lot of really good information. So prior to the tour, I think it'd be great if they had this.
Yeah, Lance, could we have that emailed to the members and as well as put on our next, in our next packet too, just so we have it?
Certainly. And we will, one of the things that you'll see at this committee is you do sometimes get requests for whether it's a new position or historically it would be a capital improvement request. We made some improvements relative to our courthouse, so I think a tour, what I'm hearing, a tour of the jail, we can probably schedule that at the same time as a quick tour of the courthouse to show you some of the ways that funding has been applied through the budget and amendments to the budget in the justice system. So if you have any other areas where you'd like those sort of tours, please just reach out to Chair Boots and myself, and we'll schedule them as a committee, working with Kim.
Chair Boots?
Go ahead.
Supervisor Lamont here. I was just wondering if they've scheduled this year's appreciation for law enforcement. They had that big thing out at the firearm place last year around this time.
We will find that information and email you, Bruce, if that's all right.
Okay. Yep,
That's just a
fine.
simple question to Chad.
Sounds good. It'd be good for the whole board to show up to support.
Absolutely. With
Thank
that, we have 8E, committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. And then we have X, F, X. Next meeting, Tuesday, June 7th, 2022 at 1:30 PM. Do we have any type of conflicts? I always ask that of the meetings, if there's any conflicts. All right. With that, I will take number 9.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn by Supervisor Mask. Second by Supervisor Morash. Any questions, any comments? All in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, thanks, everyone.